This video is meant to serve as a crash course in using WISER to determine whether or not you need to, what you might need to do to get a project financially closed out. Um, so the first step is to get to WISER, and WISER is at this URL, wiser.wisc.edu. If you don't have access to WISER, you can request it from the Budget and Financial Reporting Department. But once you log into WISER, you're going to want to look up your project. You go to the main menu, you go to Projects, and you go to Find Awards Projects. We're going to be searching by the project ID. Now to find the project ID, this is generally included in the project funding string. So going to the major drive, going to project tracking, a tracking log. Just for example, go to Granger Learning Commons. Typical project tracking log will have a project funding string. This number here, they all follow the same format, is the project ID that we use to search in WISER. And this is a number that is created by the Budget and Financial Reporting Office upon request for each project. So every project should have one of these. So if we search by that project, it'll list it and we can click on it. Now, a couple things to zone in on. We have revenues, which is the amount we've collected from the client. We have expenses, the amount that we've expensed. And this project is pretty far along, so this information is not complete. And the reason is that our period is wrong that we're searching in. We have year to date through November 5th, but most of the activity on this project took place over the course of the past 3 years or so. So we actually want to switch this to inception through date, ITD. Once we do that, the information fills out. We've collected roughly 8.5 million on this project from the client, and this is where we currently stand in terms of expenses recognized in WISER. So let's explore this a little bit. We have two categories. We have services and supplies. These are for the purchases, generally speaking, of things like equipment and furniture, things that we do not capitalize as part of the project. What we do capitalize, typically, are things such as the contract payments for construction, or the contract payments for design and services. Now there are certain equipment purchases that would qualify as capital equipment. We would have to capitalize those. But in general, that's what the capital category is for. It's for those contract payments. And those, the mechanism for capitalizing an expense like that is to use a 4000 range account code. So, but the key thing to zone in on here, let's take a step back and ask ourselves what the task at hand is. We want to know if there's any outstanding purchase that needs to be resolved before we can financially close out the project. So that is determined by the encumbrances column, and we see on this project right away that there are 0 encumbrances, 0 expenses outstanding. An encumbrance would represent, a situation where we've issued a purchase order and either the vendor hasn't invoiced us yet, or they have and we haven't paid it yet. So there's a variety of situations there, but for this particular project, there's no outstanding encumbrances. Now that does not mean the project is ready to close out necessarily, because it could be the case that somebody hasn't invoiced us yet, or a purchase order hasn't been issued. That's just part of the general project tracking process to make sure that all the contract payments have been made, all of the purchase orders that needed to be issued were issued, all of the work orders that needed to be issued were issued, etc. So by clicking on services and supplies, I've brought up a list of all of the different equipment, furniture, kind of base purchases that were not capitalized. One tool you can use then if you wanted to investigate a purchase order would be to switch from standard view to AP view. And what that does is it changes the information that's available to you. Now it's listing these in terms of the purchase order identification number, and the voucher ID. So this is where we record the receipt of the invoice and the payment status. So if we wanted to investigate any particular purchase order further, we could click on this information and it's going to take us here. And now this gives us more information as to the status of a purchase order. In this case, it's closed, which is what we would hope for. And we also have access to the vouchers, and through the vouchers we can view the invoices. And use that information however we see fit. So another way to search for information regarding a project and the purchase orders that are outstanding and so forth is to go to the main menu, go to Find POs, Vouchers, Vendors. We can do a voucher search, and again the key number in all of these cases is that project number. So we'll search by the project. Now the issue here, something always to be aware of when working in WISER, is the fiscal year. Right now we're keyed into 2020, but we haven't received any vouchers during that year. If we switch to 2019, then they start to come up, and the advantage of this screen is that we've got easier access to the different invoices. Fortunately, it's not telling us the status of the underlying purchase order. These are just invoices that we've received. If we went to Find POs and we went to the PO search, and again we searched by project, change the fiscal year. This will show us kind of paid amounts versus total amounts, and also give us access to the different statuses of the purchase order, and we would want something like complete for all of our purchase orders if we were at the financial closeout stage. Now I'm not sure if this will work. I'm going to do a little experiment here. It gives you an option to search by PO date. I'm wondering if we go far enough back and go to the current date. It's going to conflict with this. Doesn't look like it's going to let us do a broad search like that. But if it did, that would be a more convenient way of getting access to all the purchase orders. There's also the Find Detailed Transactions tool. This will let you search through a variety of fiscal years using the project. But it's not as nice. The thing, it's showing you both the original kind of purchase order when this transaction came through and then the payment on the purchase order, so you get a lot of what looks like duplicate entries. But you may find that window helpful as well. You can export all of this anytime you have a table like this. You can come up to this tool and export it to Excel if you find it nicer to work in Excel. And I'll just show you a situation where there would be an encumbrance. So for example, on the Ember Hall project, we see at the main window for this project that we have a $7,500 encumbrance. Click on that. It's going to bring up more information for us that we can use to investigate. So there's the journal line reference. That's just basically telling us what the purchase order number is. Fortunately, it doesn't let me click through to investigate it from here. So I would again want to go to probably the PO search. And the number on the search by the project number. Click on the PO ID. We find that the status is open. So if this were something we expected to be closed or completed, we would want to contact that vendor then and ask them, you know, where we're at. Has this thing been, has the purchase been invoiced? Are they done invoicing? And so on and so forth. If you encounter a situation where there's an outstanding encumbrance, but we know that we've completed the purchase order, that we're done making payments to the vendor, and there's just a small discrepancy between the final actual amount that we paid and the amount that was on the original purchase order, you would contact FP&M Purchasing and have them do an encumbrance management form, which is a tool for telling accounts payable that they need to close that order. But we can't financially close a project until we're absolutely sure that, you know, all activities have ceased on that project. And that's represented in WISER by everything being in that closed out or complete status. So hopefully this crash course was helpful. If you have any more questions, please feel free to reach out to the Budget and Financial Reporting Department. And thanks for watching.